Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 111 or 111, which is in The Hobbit, isn't it? That's Bilbo Baggins' birthday, isn't it? It's his 111st birthday. Anyway, we're at episode 111. As ever, if you like this podcast, then share it, give us a review, tell your friends. Anywhere you can, it's on every platform, so wherever you listen to it, if you're allowed to leave a review, please do. Also, tell us what you think. And then we've got a Facebook group as well, if you want to join that. There's plenty of people in there, and you can request guests or whatever and just give us your feedback. So it's much appreciated. So anyway, we've got an amazing guest today who was introduced to us by a previous guest. But before we get to him, Paul, how are you doing?
I was just about to take a swig of coffee then.
Well, shall I ask James first? Then?
No, it's fine. I did take it. It's all right. I can wait. I'm all right. The three amigos are back. The three musketeers.
Yeah.
Triple distilled.
Yeah.
We're all
After
back.
Last week's episode, just me and you, but that was which was a good one. So
It was a good one. Yeah.
it was great.
So I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, I'm fine. You know, it's starting to get cold now, isn't it? I'm wearing gloves in the morning when I go to work, so I know the autumn is coming.
That's because you're southern, though, isn't it?
You can be quite hurtful at times.
Yeah. Anyway, James, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm very good indeed, thank you. Yeah, very good. Getting ready for this upcoming weekend where I'm assisting at the SFG one with Brett Jones and Claire and Pom and
Mike Sousa's coming over for that, isn't he?
Mike Sousa will be over from the States as well.
I saw him post something the other day, and he said, "I'm getting ready for the UK," and he lifted a massive, a pair of massive kettlebells. And
I think he pressed like double 56s or something.
Something like that.
It was something ridiculous. But no, very good. And like Paul said, I'm thinking of bringing the long trousers out of retirement, and I'll be using them in the next few weeks, I'm sure. But no, everything's good.
Dear me.
Are they flares?
And I did think what Paul said there is a bit of a watered down version of Game of Thrones. He said, "Autumn is coming."
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's getting a little bit. It's still mild, but you know, it's not.
Yeah.
It's less dramatic, isn't it?
It was 21 degrees yesterday. It was lovely, but yeah, mornings are cold. Yeah. Anyway,
They are for you because you're sitting in your ice tub, aren't you? Mornings are at like 4 degrees in the water. But anyway, without further ado, we have with us down here. That's where it was on my screen. Is Mr. Mark Bennett. Hello, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm awesome, thank you.
Awesome. We'd like to hear that. That is great. Most people are like, yeah, I'm all right, I'm not bad and all that, but awesome will do. We'll love that. That's not a typically British response, is it? We'll love that.
I'm not typical anything, I don't think, so I fit in that box.
That's why you're here.
Yeah, welcome to typical, the craziness. Yes.
Excellent. So, as I alluded to earlier, Mark was introduced to me by friend of the show, Kirsten Tulloch, who was on last year, and she's going to be back on at some point. Actually, we're sorting that out. But yeah, Mark was introduced to me by her, and she just said, "You got to get this guy on." So I asked Mark before we started recording how he wants to be introduced, and he told me, and I started writing it down, but I couldn't keep up. So, Mark, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mark.
Yes, and what do you do?
Okay. So the short version is I've spent over 30 years developing a system that is very non-linear, but it's a way of going into organizations, teams, or people to help people understand how to be interdependently effective. So how to be great influencers, how to influence others to allow them to make effective decisions at self and as teams, but also with an adherence element. So how can I embed and support change with me within an organization, but how can I consciously, explicitly help others understand how to embed change in the people they're influencing, whether that's a parent, a teacher, a coach, or an athlete with another athlete. That's the short version, Peter.
Is that like Stephen Covey's interdependence, the 7 habits, like dependence, independence, interdependence. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the interdependence. Yeah. So understanding that somebody needs to be self-efficient at being self-aware themselves, making effective choices, commit with intent, review, choice execution live, but also understand how can they effectively understand others and have an effective impact with others, and make the best decision within a group to ensure other people's capabilities can be successful. So the difference between dependent and independent, it's the sweet spot that rises above both.
Excellent. And so you didn't always do this, right? You've been doing this for 30 years, but you were in the military beforehand, right?
Yeah, I joined the army in 1983, thinking everyone would be fit and motivated, because I was a bit of a wide kid at school, loved animals, loved commando films and reading books. And my mum was getting a bit worried because, when you went to school, she had the conversation, we'd like to talk to you about your son, and it wasn't normally a good conversation. So she said, Mark, what do you want to do? I said, want to be a vet or I want to be a commando. And she said, well, you're going to have to do your homework if you want to be a vet. So I said, okay, I'm joining the army. So I joined the army, and people weren't as fit as I thought they would be. So got into a bit of trouble, got a bit demotivated because I wasn't embraced to think. I was more embraced, turn up, parade there, do this, and then ended up meeting a commando soldier who was just awesome, took me under his wing, saw me for me, saw the good in me. And then I went down, did the commando course, became a physical training instructor. And then early 90s, when I came from just served commando forces after the Gulf conflict, served in Operation Haven there, got promoted to recruit training. And I thought I was the man, because at the beginning of basic training, each platoon has a physical training instructor and a sergeant, etc. And at the end of 10 weeks, and you could do what you want with them physically, you had competitions, which was log race, obstacle course, endurance, etc. And my platoon was winning every single one. So I thought, I'm the best instructor going. And then in 1990, one of the parents at a pass-off parade pulled me to the side and says, oh, you're Corporal Bennett. My son doesn't stop talking about you. You've really changed his life. And the light bulb went off in a negative way, because I actually, within that split second, I thought I'd also changed the lives of every single recruit that had not passed in, that had failed, that had gone back to civilian life. So I started to then look at the numbers, and actually the percentage of people starting to ending was quite low. So I realized then, thinking I was a great instructor, I realized I was a pretty terrible instructor based on my perception of success. So I decided either to change what I did or change how I did it. And that started the journey. And since then, that's just been my full-time passion. Obviously, didn't get it right straight away, and actually lost a couple of competitions. So you can imagine the peer pressure I had then, saying, Mark, you're getting soft. But I knew I couldn't go back to what I was doing, because I knew that was wrong. I just didn't yet know was right, but I knew the yet was the only thing stopping me getting there. So I just had to keep pursuing it. Long story short, I transferred to the Army Physical Training Corps, ended up being one of the senior warrant officers, training the trainers. But I was along that route, I already started to work with elite sport outside, Super League team, Premiership rugby, holidays, weekends. And they were saying, what you're doing is really making a difference. But then my next light bulb came on, because when the teams were going back into their normal seasons, within a couple of weeks, some of the athletes that I really connected with were calling me back and saying, Mark, it's just gone back to like it was before we met you. So then I realized, well, actually, this is going to be useless unless I know how to influence the coaches and influencers. So when I'm not there, they can still see and do what I can do in their own way to make them effective. So that took another 6-7 years, and I'm still fine tuning it now. But now I've worked with over 30 sports, Olympic champions, world champions, European champions, Commonwealth champions, worked at grassroots in sport, worked in schools, globally around the world in rough neighborhoods, and just in grassroots sport as well. Also work in corporate business, supporting the change there. So it's just, I turned down promotion in 2006. I was awarded the MBE by the Queen for the work building it, which was really an honor. And since then, it's just been continuing to grow and grow and grow. And the big thing I've realized along the years was the commonality with everything I work in is people. So it's understanding people, their own perspective of what they do and how they do isn't always accurate. So a lot of it is about actually, it's not what I see in others, is what they see in themselves. So unless we can develop self-accuracy in them, whatever intervention you give them, they might think, well, I'm already doing that. So there's a lot of work you need to do with somebody before you can just say, here are the tools to go and do it. And then also understand, actually, the want to do it may not necessarily drive the behaviors to do it. So therefore, you need the adherence support in there as well. So you can see from 1990, there's been a lot of layers that you think, well, actually, if this is systemically robust, there's a lot more support strategies need to be put in place.
Well, I think so now compared to 1990, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but there's a lot more distraction in the world, isn't there, than there was then. So getting people to adhere to stuff, I've been learning this myself very recently, because I mean, I've been a coach for like 10 years. So I'm at the beginning of what you were talking about, I've just realized I don't know what I don't know. So now I need to start bringing that forwards, and then I made the realization of, like, actually, if you tell someone what to do, they're going to, if they tell themselves they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. You've got to convince somebody to tell themselves to do it, and then they'll believe themselves, right? And then that's where adherence comes from. And I've been realizing that recently. So it's quite fascinating to hear you doing that, because you realized that 30 years ago, and you're still learning, you're still fine tuning it now, 30 years later. So, and what I also love is that you've just said, like, that diverse amount of people you work with, everybody's got to go through some sort of behavior change at some point to improve themselves and get to where they want to be. So, I mean, how is it, do you use a similar kind of methodology with all of them, just at a different kind of level? Do you come at it from like a one sort of perspective to make it easier for yourself, basically?
Yeah, the principles are the same. There's some nuances and some additional tools that you use at different elite level, pressure loading, etc. But the fundamentals, the base, if you like, is exactly the same, and also exactly the same language. So if I'm working with a senior manager and a mentor and a coach and an athlete, because the language is the same, then actually I explicitly get the coach, if we use it in a team environment, the coach to explicitly share with their athletes, look, I've now learned something that I realize I need to do differently than I've done before, and this is why, but I'm not going to be as great at it. But I want to share with you the value, and then share with you that actually I need your support to help me get better, because I'm going to be a bit rough early on. And that in itself, one, understanding everyone's using the same language, so then it's easier for people to support each other, but also for anyone to go against what they may normally think. We go, I'm the coach or manager, I should be the one that's good, to say, actually, no, you want to share, actually, you've recognized you need to change, and this is why, according to what we want to become, and you're sharing that you're not good enough yet and need their support. That's the greatest, not only role modeling, but actually it's the greatest adherence support structure, because then you can give permissions to anyone. So even senior adult coaches do this with young kids, 9, 10 years old, where they say, look, if I'm not doing this, you can say this to me. I'll give you a great example. A lot of coaches talk too much. Now, initially, they don't realize they talk too much, so I put a camera on their chest and say, look, just do you, film yourself coaching, and then I just want you to watch it back and just take time notes. And I'm just interested in you, so I can have a better understanding of how you see your coaching. But obviously, on top of that, the self-awareness increases. So if someone recognizes, and oh my God, I didn't realize how much I talked, then we identify if that's a priority, then that would what we would call your work on. So you'd say, right, that rides against above everything else, but explicitly share that with everybody. And then you can give some permissions, which we call like what ifs. What if this happens? Well, you can do this. So an example of young kids would be, I now recognize that I'm talking too much. And if our aim is to get you to think for yourselves and have confidence without fear to make great decisions, you listening to me is not really going to help you engage or help you do that. So if you hear me talking too much and you know what you need to do, just say pineapple to me. And if you say pineapple, then I'll step back straight away and you can show me. But here's the thing. You need to be able to show me now based on where we agree the level is. So it may not be an outcome, but it will be the understanding, the commitment. But if you call it, you need to make sure you call it for the team, not just because you know it. So make sure you're listening and talking to your teammates. So again, we're developing the light and shade of interdependence, but that kids will love. So then the first time, this is where we prime it. Then the first time they do it, we got to prime the coach, go, you need to be waiting now for that pineapple. And the first time somebody tentatively does it, because they're thinking, oh, you know, hang on a minute, will this actually work? You got to honor it 100%. And then afterwards, thank them for doing it. And then now we're developing the behaviors we want. So that's a tiny example that you might adjust for other people, but that's where it becomes common language. Everyone understands it, and everyone explicitly shares where they are on the journey and how you can support me in getting there. That's going to be a win-win for both of us.
I think that's brilliant, because it helps people speak up as well, doesn't it? Because you're saying, look, I don't know everything. I'm vulnerable as well. I'm learning along the way. And it doesn't matter how much you know. You still need to know. You know that you can't know everything, because everyone learns differently as well. So it's like, I've just written it down: vulnerability, mistakes, and then empathy. So then people are then, well, hang on, if you're vulnerable, affable, whatever you want to call it, well, I can be as well in your presence, and then it creates like a safe space, doesn't it? I think, for people to talk up.
Now, Peter, there's some key things in there. So tell me if I'm delving in too deep, but these are really, for me, really interesting and important. You use two words there that often are misunderstood. And also, once we understand them, sometimes we'll shift the language, or sometimes we'll shift their perception of the language. So you use vulnerability there. So in particular in elite sport, especially in the tough sports like rugby union and sub businesses, that word vulnerability is massively seen as a weakness. And even if you explain that it's not, it's a strength, people will still lock into what they may have seen for years. So that's a word I don't use with people if I think the word would be an inhibitor. Because there's no point. You can explain it all you want, but if they think actually it's a weakness. So actually sharing and role modeling, actually they get that. The other word is mistake. Now, I'll give you a real world example for this. Big shout out to a coach, Great Britain basketball coach I've been mentoring now for about 10 years. And he was under 16, under 18 GB coach. Now, if you know anything about basketball, the level of financial and depth support in this country is really low compared with a lot of the European counterparts. So Alan was at the European Championships. They weren't expected to win at all. They weren't expected to get into the knockouts. But because Alan was using these principles, they were getting the best out with what they had more than any other team. Alan was making the knockout stages, and it was a playoff, I think, for the final. And it was an extra time. And there was a couple of minutes left. I think it might have been less than a minute. And Alan called a timeout. Alan made a decision, and they ended up losing the match. So what I do with all my coaches that I'm mentoring is we do what's called hot and cold reviews. So we use Teams or Slack or WhatsApp. But basically what that means is straight after any match, the coach voice messages me in a group, and they will share when the emotions are still hot straight away, how's their state, the choices they made and their commitment to them straight away. And then a cold review is when they've had a chance to cool down, maybe next day watching the film, they do the same review and they're recognizing if anything changes. So Alan did the hot review and he said, I think I made a mistake there. And he was really beating himself up about it because he was focused on, oh, I shouldn't have done that. So when we had to the cold review and I called up for a call with him, I said, look, Alan, can you work through the data you had? So I use this action review process, which we share with everyone. So the data is, how was my state? Yeah, actually in the situation state was good. Next question is, okay, what did you see? So that's the data. And he would say, okay, this is what I saw. The next question is, what were the options? And he says, well, these are my options. And then the next question is, so what influenced your choice? And he would say, well, actually, it was these. So I decided to go for this. Did you commit to it? Yeah, 100% team committed to it. Okay. And then from that, so the first thing is we committed. Second one is, what would you change, choice or execution? And he said, actually, if we were to do it again, I'd make this choice. And now we get to the button of why it was not a mistake. So I said, Alan, so therefore what you're saying is it wasn't a mistake. He said, no, it was. I said, no. A mistake is only a mistake, a mistake, if with the data you knew at the time, you made the wrong decision, you took the wrong take. With the data you had at the time, you made the right take and you committed to it. Only after action did you have new data that could influence your decision next time. So if you now were to do it again and ignore that information, that would be a mistake. But at the time, it was not a mistake. And this is a big thing when people use that word mistake. What we got to get to, hang on, was it a mistake? Or actually, with the data you had at the time, you committed to the best choice you thought. Well, that's not a mistake. And this is huge for people to get their head around, because some people are so outcome driven. If the outcome's not what they want, they'll try and search for a reason why they should have done something differently. And sometimes there's too many variables to actually have that evaluation.
Yes.
So Mark, I wanted to go back, Mark, and just ask you about this, because when you're explaining the physical training stuff in the military, I don't know why I watch a lot of movies and things, and my mind was going to that Officer and a Gentleman, you know, with Richard Gere and Lou Gossett Jr., that kind of thing. And when you had this kind of realization that you were pushing the elite to become better, but then there were lots of people that were kind of being lost along the way, and then I think you said I might be paraphrasing slightly, but you almost sort of changed your approach. And then for a while, you weren't winning all the competitions because you were changing your approach. How did that kind of work in the military setting, which for me, I've never been in the military, but it seems like it's such a sort of hierarchical structure where, you know, you have to have the rules, you have to have the chain of command and all the rest of it. When you try to, I'll use the word vulnerability because, you know, we've discussed it. When you kind of started trying to, again, maybe soften or maybe change the way you were doing things slightly, how was that met, and how did you find that work with the people you were training?
The people that I was training didn't know any different. So they were like, oh, okay, this is all I know. The people that are around me, my peers and my senior ranks, they respected me highly anyway. So they weren't questioning my knowledge or expertise. You know, I had credibility, but they were outcome led. So because the outcomes were not as good, therefore they were just saying, go back, Mark, you're wrong, it's not working, because they were looking at the short term. But also then their measure of success was different to my measure of success, which I get all the time now. It's such imprinted in my brain where people are going, well, it's in the, and we say, hang on a minute, well, what is success to us? So for them, if success for them was winning the competitions, then that's a whole different ball game. Success that I've now switched from to is actually increasing pass rates, still maintaining the protocols of critical. And I wasn't very good at explaining it. And still now, I don't get it right every time explaining this, if it's changing the way people are thinking, but I'm definitely a lot better. And sometimes you've just got to go, hey, I know I'm doing it right. The route is right. Maybe what I'm doing, how I'm doing it is not there yet, but actually the route I'm on's the right route. So whatever you say, I'm going to ignore you anyway. I was quite a tenacious git like that. So people had other words for me, but tenacious is the one I'm sticking with.
I mean, in terms of probably global military institutions, the British Army, you know, like most of the major military kind of institutions globally, they're kind of set up to create cohesion, aren't you? Because you take people off the street, usually young men with a ton of testosterone, maybe looking for direction, and very quickly you've got to create a team, not only a team that operates in a safe environment of, you know, just the base camp, but also in the field on operations, under pressure, under fire. And that kind of, there can't be many businesses that can match that level of that transition from the wayward to the disciplined. What are you noticing about the way the military creates cohesion versus businesses? Because we've been through COVID, where everyone's doing remote working. Everyone sees each other as an email address or a phone number. They're not sitting next to each other. And businesses, like anything, can live or die on the cohesion of their employees. So what are you seeing as the differences, and what are you taking over from the military and seeing as transferable?
It's a good question, and there's so many elements to that. The commonalities is beliefs in others' capability is where both of them fall down often, both in the military and in business. And what I mean by that is sometimes you get a self-fulfilling prophecy. So a manager will will want people to do things a certain way. I'm generalizing here. So if we say, the manager says, look, I'm giving you a task, I want you to do it. Now, some managers, they're so focused on wanting that task done correctly, they'll micromanage that person. And because you're micromanaging the person, then that person is saying, well, I'm not going to think for myself, because anytime I do something slightly different than the boss wants, the boss just has a go at me. So boss, just tell me what you want me to do. So you end up with people that are not empowered to really be excited about their role and commit to decisions. So therefore, then the manager is now the self-fulfilling prophecy. I told you that person was lazy and can't do it for themselves, because look, they're not thinking for themselves. So some managers don't have the skills to know, well, how can I take that person and get them to own it, get them to make great decisions and link it back. Now, going back to the military is a bit back to front. And there's plenty of data that the military has had for years that supports this. And what I mean by that is, if you go to commando forces, SAS, SBS, any of the higher element that people perceive as special forces, any degree, what you'll find is that the main focus is we want people to be able to trust them to do things for themselves as an individual and as a team. Your husbandry, you're making decisions based on what you see, and trusting you can adapt that based on what you see, because actually you can't follow a rigid path because things change. And battle is about nothing going according to plan. So we've got to be good at trusting people in the what if and reading your teammates, backing your teammates. But what you'll find is that when you go to basic training, there's a lack of trust in the capability of a recruit. Now, some of that is quite right for safety reasons. But interestingly, with the same recruits, when they go on adventurous training, there'll be the same recruits that are told to stand here, parade here, we have to march them here, we check their beds, etc., because they can't think for themselves. They'll go then to somewhere in Wales or Scotland for adventurous training. They'll have a different set of instructors, and there it will be about you making decisions, adventurous training, exploring. There'll still be safety protocols, but you'll see a whole different dynamic with those people that were just stood still, just not thinking. If you ask a question, no one will answer it. And all of a sudden now they're communicating, they're helping each other. They're actually committing to things they wouldn't normally do. So the qualities there in adventure training actually could easily be implanted into the basic training. It's a bit, if you think about Sandhurst, which is a Royal Military Academy for training officers, the British Army traditionally will select the very best military training instructors, put them on a selection course, and then train them up to train potential officers. Now, they don't do that to the people that will train basic privates in basic training, but you could argue actually the most skillful instructors should be the people that are hardest to train, not the ones that are easiest to train. So if you, and I understand why they, I want the best in there, but it's a contradiction all the way through that actually I never believed, and I still don't, that actually we're doing the best service with the recruits. Now, there has been huge changes in the last 10 years, some forced and some because people are starting to see a better way. But we're still not where we could be. And also, I think businesses, they do the best they can with what they know and have. But I don't think they invest enough in two elements, in the software of managers and understanding just because someone's good at one job doesn't mean to say they can be promoted to another job and they'll be good again. It's a bit like a top athlete getting fast track into coaching. Doesn't mean they're going to be a great coach. And it's understanding, let's develop the software, but also understanding the symbiotic relationship between wellness and performance, and understand we need to invest in wellness every single day and not only invest in it when there's a problem. And again, with the military and the business, I think those are the two elements that I think are often missing when you see an underperforming organization.
That's a huge thing, what you've just said. The number one, that what you've just said is about people getting promoted to their level of incompetence. That's called the Peter principle, isn't it? And I hate that name because it's like, it's like that's using my name in vain, that is. But anyway, and then I've forgotten what I was going to say now. But it was
what I was going to say, Mark, was I think might be what Peter was going to say. I'm trying to read Peter's mind. But one thing I took from what you said was that it's like coaching absolute beginners in something physical, like coaching. We do a lot of, say, physical training in the gym and things. And it's actually, I think a lot of the time, newer coaches get assigned to coach the beginners, and then the more experienced coaches get assigned to coach the more experienced sort of, they're not athletes, but, you know, people who come into the gym.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, the more experienced coaches actually would be better off coaching the beginners, because then they get the basics and the fundamentals right, and then they move through. And then the more experienced coaches can, the less experienced coaches are working with kind of a higher caliber of person when they already get to them, because they've got the fundamentals and the basics right. So I think that's kind of similar to what you were saying with the military.
Yeah, and I'd say to that, James, also is making sure we're not good, and I'm generalizing here, at building the software and the basic coaching courses. So we talk about it, but we don't. I mean, I can give a beginner basic coaching skills, and I'll share an example now that you could use in the gym that isn't formally taught on any course I know of. And an example would be someone's now coaching a basic person a squat. Let's go for a basic deadlift. And often what happens is you'll look at the deadlift, you'll EDIP it, so explanation, demonstration, imitation, practice. Go, look, here's a deadlift, bang, right? You have a go, lighter weight, or, you know, the same, should be the same height bar, right? Based on flexibility, screening, but often that doesn't happen. But what often is, when the person's doing it, they'll say, okay, do this. And then the coach will straight away give them feedback and go, okay, you just need to do this, or give them a trigger, whatever it may be. But actually, a basic tool, if we're developing self-awareness early on and self-evaluation, is to film them, the person, but now the person isn't allowed to look at the film yet. Then you say, okay, just review that. Now the person has to vocalize how they feel only based on the success. So is that making sure the foot is on your tripod, whatever it is, and drive it, whatever it may be, just that. They go, okay, yeah, I definitely committed. I reckon I nailed it, or I think I went a bit over on my toes there a little bit. Now, without the coach saying anything, now they press the video and press play. The coach is still silent. Now we're just going, okay, do you still think the same? Or based on that now, are you re-referencing your awareness and you think something different? And only then does a coach step in and go, well, I agree, or actually, let's have a look at this. Now, you could teach a beginner coach to do that. And if you did that with a beginner, look already now the engagement and self-reflection compared with the coach just giving you the solution, or what is called the writing reflex, the correcting reflex. Oh, I see a problem. Let me give you the solution.
That's why I loved what you said. I've just remembered what I was going to say, but I'll come back to it. What you said earlier was about filming coaches just talking.
Yeah,
I think that's brilliant, because Ryan Hurst was on last week from GMB Fitness, and he said you've got your best coach in your pocket. You just record what you're doing and you see your own movement, because you can think you're moving well. I mean, moving well is a broad term, isn't it? But you can think you're doing something, right?
Yeah.
And then you video it and you're like, oh God, I'm not doing what I thought I was doing.
Yeah.
And that immediate feedback. But I didn't really think about that with the coaching thing and talking. And I think that's brilliant, because if you can hear yourself, you'd be like, God, I don't have to talk a lot of crap, don't I? Isn't that confusing? But what I was going to say earlier was
Peter, can I guess what I thought you were going to say?
You can.
Now I could shoot down in flames here, but I thought you were going to really jump on that symbiotic thing about wellness and performance and its connection and investment.
I was going to ask about that. I've written that down.
Okay.
But
yeah. Looking at your face, Peter, I was wrong. So
I'm not sure. I don't know. You might have said what I was going to say. Just in a
okay.
What your favorite ice cream was?
Yeah, salted caramel. Wellness. So when you were saying like in an organization or something, and then you don't get to deal with the problem until it happens.
Yeah.
When there'll be something that happens weeks before building up to that problem. And if you can nip it in the bud there, if you can get to that issue, it's like with mindset stuff, when people get angry, it's not necessarily, anger isn't a problem. It's the thing that happened that brought them up to that anger and stuff like that. So it was kind of what your thoughts are on that, because like when something does eventually go wrong, James is wearing a Stop Chasing Pain hoodie there, which is Perry Nicholson. And he talks about that, when you get pain in your body, it's probably been something you've been doing for 10 years or longer. Yeah. And then this pain appears overnight because you've slept wrong. Yeah. You've slept funny. Yeah. It's like, no, it's been happening for ages. Yeah. So what do you like?
That's again, and you'll see when you start asking contextual questions, this is where the action review process keeps coming back. And that's the power of this framework. So if I put it in a business situation, so imagine now you've done something that's causing an issue. And now as a manager, I'm going to come into you. Now, let's use one example you had there, Peter. I'm now angry because it hasn't been what I wanted to be. And now I'm going in emotionally charged to have a meeting with you, but it's going to be more like a telling off. So first thing is awareness of state is always the first question in the action review. So if my state is not effective, can I regulate it in the moment? If I can't, I don't start the interaction if I can choose to, because it's not going to be effective. So this is how you can see it with parents, so powerful. But now if the state is acceptable, then the first question I ask is, right, let me understand how you came to the decision you have in an openly intriguing way. And they've been taught the action review as well. Every member of the staff has. So the first thing is this was the data I was working with. Now, you as a manager are now listening, because what you want to do, I always use the words when I start my training with anyone, is you need to be a detective and a brain surgeon. So, and I say young athletes to do the same. So what I mean by that is to be the detective, really see if you can work it out for yourself. To be the brain surgeon, don't generalize. Look at the accuracy and the specifics of how you're measuring, how you're explaining, how you're talking, because often it's the generalization that's your killer, because you can't spot the differences. So when we do the scanning, all I'm doing as a manager now, I'm asking that person, what data are you working with? Can you share it? Now that person's sharing, okay, and it may be an accountant on the computer screen. It may be someone in a workhouse. It could be I'm having a face-to-face meeting. I'm listening or asking, seeking the information I need. Now, often, as soon as I'm listening, as a manager, I'll be listening to, yes, that's all the data. This is me in my head, self-reflecting, or there's some data missing. Now, often, because the action review is about finding, not just helping you make decisions, but reflecting, if it's a yes, I move on to the next one. Okay, so what options did you identify from that data? Now, if that's a yes, then I go into, okay, so what influenced your choice? Now, that could be for a fruit and veg business, that could be seasonal. It could be situational. It could be personal capability. It could be anything. It could be on time scale, pressure decision. So now I'm now got an understanding of that person qualifying and quantify why they came to that decision. And then it's okay, how was the execution? Did you go for it? Commit. So based on those, I'd say 100% of the time so far, but there could be where it hasn't happened, is we will identify where the source of the problem was. So it could be as early on as that person wasn't in a good state because they were juggling and they had 3 windows open on the computer. They didn't actually read to read. You know, that thing about you're reading without reading. You're looking at an email, but you're not really reading it. You're just words going through it. So you don't see the data. So if the state's not good enough, we go to that first. Okay, how can we help you be present? So even you've got 20 things on, in that split second, shut them off. Attention here, attention to this conversation with this person. If it's not there, if the data is good, then I'm now looking at if there's something wrong with the data. Now I'm sharing that with you. Okay, this is the missing data you've lost or you didn't find. This is the source of the issue. So let's find a way to make sure you capture that data. If the data is good and they didn't identify an option, that could be like what I call in sport game IQ. So although you have all the data, you can't yet see that there is another option than you want to go for. It could be subconscious or conscious bias, where under pressure, someone will always choose the same option and they won't even look for the other options, because golfers do this, by the way, so often, is they'll come to a situation, the ball's gone into the rough or on the side, straight away as they're walking up, they've already decided the club they're going to go for on a shot. And often it's the risky, crazy one. And what they're not looking for, you go, hang on a minute, what is all the data? What are all the options? And then what's going to influence my choice to allow them to go, actually, I should just chip it out onto the center line, not just go for the crazy shot. So this is a really effective and transparent way to allow anyone itself to self-reflect, but also allow a meaningful conversation in an organization to identify what was the source of an issue and then put in an intervention support there. Importantly, and I just want to add on this, I also get managers, coaches, and people to do this, and parents to do this when someone's done something exceptionally well. Because what can often happen is we'll only review when things go wrong.
Yeah.
If things go really well, we'll do a generalized review, not a detailed one. So often, and it's crazy when I do this with athletes from the coaches on the side down, they'll be doing hot one-to-ones when something goes wrong, but they'll never do one when something goes well. So when I first get the coaches to do this, and we explicitly say to the players, look, we're going to do hot one-to-ones with you, and it may be you've done something really well. But as soon as they do it, the athlete's running over and I think, oh, definitely done something wrong because coach never speaks to me unless I have. And they'll go, where am I? In defense. What we were doing, transition defense. So there's only two things. I did that one. Oh, is it this one, coach? And immediately they're already wired to thinking learnt answers. And when the coach says, no, go through the actual review process, and then they're going for it, they're kind of, well, hang on a minute. And then at the end, when you go, would you have changed anything? They go, no, I reckon I nailed it. And the coach says, absolutely, that's the best I've ever seen you do it. That's awesome. You can see the whole body language and the shock of, what? Yeah, keep doing it. But the big thing with that is we're in an environment now, and I think you mentioned it before, with so many, internet and information data finding. A lot of it is in a negative way or generalize the dream. But what we're not very good at is getting people to say, look, we spend a lot of time analyzing of how we can get better, but we don't spend enough time analyzing how come that went so well. What did I do that time that made that so great? I need to identify what was different, because that's the one bit I want to repeat. And this is that balance between searching for the unacceptable and adjusting, but searching for the exceptional and recognizing to repeat.
Does that, right, I've got loads of things going around in my head now. Does that go along with, people think there's a few things here, and I'm kind of interested in how you apply this to businesses and parents and say normal people in general, not athletes and stuff like that, right? Because a lot of people are too busy in their own heads to do things, and especially in the fitness world, right? You try to get people to commit to a program and stuff, and they can do it for a certain amount of time, and then everything else gets in the way. And then business wise, obviously businesses have got margins and all this sort of stuff, to like targets to hit. But what it sounds like you're able to help them do is to slow down. So what you said about the military as well, slow down. You might have to step back a bit, but then that pushes you forwards, because it's not about doing more. It's about reflecting and doing more of what's right, and less of the other stuff that you have to then review 12 weeks down the line when it's all gone wrong, and go back to 12 weeks before and start again, as opposed to going back to last week or yesterday or whatever. So am I right? Am I thinking on that? And is this how you try to?
Yeah, there's a few answers there, Peter. One is, initially it's a new skill, so it will be quite slow to do, but very, very quickly you'll naturally be doing this anyway. And so if I paraphrased and added to what you said there, yes, we want people to slow down, be still in order to be quicker. So the fact you're being present, the fact you're now evaluating, is allowing you to get ahead quicker than you would do if you were just continuing to juggle grayness, as I call it, because eliminating the gray is the number one principle I say with everybody. So if we relate this to a novice or someone that's just got an appearance goal that's walking into a gym, what would be unacceptable is them walking into a gym and not knowing what success is for that session. What do I want to get out of that session? What's it look like? What's it feel like? And I've got to ask myself that question everything before I even go on a treadmill or pick up a weight or a kettlebell. Because if I haven't got that, I've got gray. And if I've got gray, the chances are I'm going to set myself up for mediocrity or failure. So what I want to do is go, look, anything I do, I'm going to do with intent. So however much my brain can process, I'm going to strip it back to the point where I can have intent. And if that's one thing, great. Do that one thing awesomely well, because that's going to be better than doing 5 things kind of. And it's that clinical simplisticness that I think even with elite sports, the one thing they said to me is, say, Mark, you make things so simple. The challenge is there, but the understanding and the clarity allows me to commit.
The thing about it's important to be reflective, but I suppose one of the things you do in the military is that sometimes you just do it. And then people, I suppose there's a question, you don't want people to question things too much. Sometimes they just have to do it because that's the role. You know, like you show up a parade, you do this, you get up at this time. I don't want you to, you see it in the films. It's like, you don't want them questioning it. That's just what they have to do in order to be the best in their role. How do you balance between self-reflection and action? Sometimes there's just a process of doing, you know.
It's interesting you're saying that, because I would say, let's go back to the Falklands conflict. What was that, 82? I think 82. That was pretty much embedded with the parachute regiment. So and guards before, you know, we go back to the ball wars, World War II, where sometimes we want people to run over a hill and not question if there's a sniper or a machine gun on there. You know, put your berry on and you're bulletproof, but a lot of people die. So in the old way of soldiering, that was always one of the cases. But I think, and it links back to social media, internet has really opened the doors to actually people thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm not going to do that anymore. And that happened actually a couple of times in the Falklands. It happened a few times in conflict since, where a platoon sergeant, a corporal, and often a young lieutenant or captain has made a decision, and it's been the unsafe decision. It's been the wrong decision. And in the past, they go, just follow me or I'll shoot you. Actually, now people are going, whoa, hang on, there's a better choice here.
Because it's like the First World War, where that was in its most extreme version. Of that. It's just like
unbelievably so. Yeah. So there is that element where we want to get people to see the value. And when I say value is, you don't have to like it, but you have to see the value and why we're doing it. And that's where we put, there is a hierarchy. We go that there'll be times when I'm going, look, even if you don't like doing it, we're doing this, and you've got to commit. Now, not if there's a safety issue, not if actually people's lives are going to be at stake. So combat is slightly different, but that's where you build trust and capability. So through peacetime role and developing, you'll know that corporal that is, he's gonna take me into that brick or platoon or sergeant. I trust them implicitly. I trust them with their lives because they've shown me that they're capable of making great choices under pressure. So therefore, when they do, you go, okay, I'm backing you. What tends to not happen anymore that may have happened many years ago is you think that guy's an idiot. And then when you're going into battle and they do that, you're going, no, I'm not going to die for you because you're making a dumb choice. So there's a lot of texture to it, but you're absolutely right. There will be times in any organization, the military is a pinnacle of that with life and death, where, you know, you've got to just go. But what the difference is, I think now, is people are continually making decisions. So elite forces are continually making decisions all the time, collating data, adjust, and they train. You train at peacetime to be really good at under pressure, not being blinkered at collating the data and making choices live. You don't have to stand and think about it. And I found that even with the teams I'm working with in rugby, basketball, netball, hockey, where very, very quickly, I'm talking about months here, players naturally start doing this live on the pitch and the court. They don't have to stop. Literally data on and off the ball, right? Choices, bang, I'm going. But initially, you know, it's quite hard to think that way. I think some people naturally do parts of it. Some people naturally do all of it. Some people do some of it. And that's why often where people are often quite good because they have a lot of ability, but often it gets broken down where, you know, when we're talking about looking at all the options and the influences, that's often where people trip up because they get to a safe thing. When pressure goes on, they go for their safe option. And sometimes that's not the best option.
I think this is really interesting for me because the more I coach, the more time I spend with my clients. I mean, it was highlighted by a conversation I had today with someone who's interested in training with us. You know, spent 4 years deciding not to do anything, talking himself out of it. And again, at the end of our chat, he's sitting there in front of me. He's made a time. He said, I need to think about it. And I'm like, well, you've just been thinking about it for 4 years.
Yeah.
You haven't done anything. I mean, I'm trying to work out about how do I have nutrition programs, I have strength training programs, blah, blah, blah. That's so everyone has that. But it's like, what kind of program could I create and how would it look if actually the sole purpose of the program was decision making, you know, the art of decision making? Because I always want someone to take action, in whatever way, whether it's a yes or a no, or I can lift it or I can't, or I'm going to show up, or I'm going to book in my classes. Booking in the classes is a decision. Just choosing not to book in classes is a decision. Choosing not to eat well is a decision. I'm fascinated by this because the more I think about it, the more I think the art of decision making, which you guys are getting your coaches to practice, whether it's in the military or you know, in professional sports, is like, okay, we're going to be making decisions under pressure. So we need to create environments in which we're rehearsing that in low risk, so that when it does happen, we trust ourselves and the players can trust us and our friends and family and our employees can trust us that actually, we're going to make a good one. I think it's fascinating. I'm trying to think about how I would actually turn it into a challenge, you know, to get people in the right mindset.
And you're absolutely right. With organizations and with sports teams, that can be a success criteria for a whole session. our session is effective decision making. What does that look like for us? So put them in situations. We can use constraints to put more opportunity situations in. And we only review that. We review the success of that. And the review timeouts are 1 minute, 30 seconds, no more. Using the action review process to get them bang back out again. And there's lots of textures to this. So another texture will be when they come in for a chat, it's 30 seconds. With a 10-second countdown, they've all got to agree what they're going to commit to, and then they have to all commit to it. So the next time they come in for a chat, the first 5 seconds is, did we commit to what we said? Because if the answer is no, we can't talk about anything else. And this, again, is very not what traditional coaching does in sport. What often happens is, and business, we have a chat and we come to, okay, we're going to do this. It's never really clear. Too many people are talking. Often it's the same people that are really vocal, it's the same silences. They'll say 4 or 5 really interesting, useful things, but at the end of it, they're not really agreeing what they're going to do the one thing. There may be too many, so people now can't remember. And then the important thing is no one's scanning for, did you commit to it? They're going, oh, great chat. And then off we go. And the next time we catch up, go, let's have another great chat. What great chats. But what we're not doing is going, I want to know
totally
what you're committing to. Now I'm going to deliberately scan for, are you committing to what you said? Now, whether it comes off or not is secondary. The primary is you're committing to what you said. Now I'm looking for, okay, it's not working. Are you identifying that? Are you adapting? But the first thing is, are you committing?
I've got a great example of that from yesterday. Number one, by the way, what Marcus said, for all you listeners out there, what Marcus said is damn right. You can listen to all these lovely conversations, but take bits away from them and do it. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I got a great example of this yesterday. I was up in Newcastle over the weekend. So we usually do sessions on a Monday morning in the park, and I wasn't here. And I told all my guys I wasn't here. I've got a booking system that they use to book in. Monday was blocked out. 2 of them turned up anyway, because they were kind of in that flow. So they just got out of bed and went. So 2 of them turned up and I wasn't there. So they did a session, the 2 of them anyway, and then went home. So they were like, we got an extra one in. And I was like, that, I love that. I absolutely love it, because they've done it with like just autonomously, just straight there. And I thought that was fantastic.
And you think, Peter, you go into gyms now. I mean, I still, I'm 55 now, and I still do 2 days on, 1 off training. I think it's part of me, my wellness now, but also I still want to have that conversation with Mother Nature to look half decent in my 60s and be pain free. But the gyms I go to is, apart from 3 people, the gyms I go to, the others, and it's not an elite gym, it's a commercial gym, although it's a nice one, big one, is they're just going through the motions when they train.
Yeah,
they're moving the sets, they're moving the reps, they're stopping. There's no intent to what they're doing, and it's no surprise that in a year's time they look the same or worse than they are now. So it's not the time they're putting in that's the problem, it's the quality of an intent within the clarity of what they're doing. Most of them could do half the time in the gym and have 4 times the results. And I think that's where, if we look at even general fitness, parenting, decision making, is identifying what's the number one or 2 things that will give you the biggest impact. Know what they look like. I call them UAEs, put UAEs around them. So what will be exceptional, acceptable, and unacceptable. Get everyone involved of influence to understand what that is for support, and then just commit to that long enough so you've got a time to see the change and then evaluate.
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, I think that's it. I mean, it's so many people, they practice without any mindfulness. They practice without any kind of mental commitment to it. And you know, I often have conversations with people saying, and I say to them, I say, look, you just need to train twice a week with us. That's your minimum commitment. You know, you could train more, but it's the minimum commitment. That's not enough. You know, but you're not getting any results. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
With the other 3, 4, 5 days that you're training? You know, you're obviously just spinning your wheels. You're doing it without intent. You're doing it with a lack of knowledge. You know, it makes such a big difference when you go in and you say, I'm going to do, well, there's a quote. It's like, or, you know, be impressed by the man who walks into a space and does exactly what he intended to do. I'm butchering that. That's a quote. But there's something about someone who walks in, looks like they know what they're doing, does it, and then leaves. You know, as opposed to faffs about.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, Mark, that from it was kind of almost like the foundational point that you said. I think it was the first stage, which kind of we haven't discussed a lot, but I think is the root of, and I'm sure you agree, is the root of most problems in relationships or organizations or communication on the whole, is that being aware of the state that you're in. And when you say it, I can think of multiple times where I've handled a situation because I've, you know, been in the wrong state. And I've learned a lot about this lately, where actually you need to, like you said, I think you called it hot conversations and cold conversations, or hot and cold reviews, or something like, you know, so that, you know, when you go away and you let things settle down and let your state change, and then you reflect on things, you often have a very different review process and outcome, and come to different decisions, don't you, rather than that state. And I think in organizations, that's massive. And I think the other thing that you said in regards to making a decision and then everyone committing to it and then going away and doing it, I've certainly seen it in the past in organizations where you'll make a decision, you all kind of go along with it, and then, but some people are just waiting for it to go wrong to sort of say, well, I knew that was the wrong decision in the first place. You know, we shouldn't have done it like that. We should have done it like this. So having that as a team, I mean, that's incredibly powerful, but that only comes when you genuinely are all pulling in the same direction, doesn't it? And you all want the same outcome. So, no, it's fantastic.
Some people's job seems to be just the ability to say no, rather than actually come up with a plan. I've worked with so many middle managers, and their sole job seemed to come in and just, it was veto. It was a power of veto, and that was about it. No decision making, no ideas, no action taken. Just you come up with a plan, they veto it, yes or no.
On the hot and cold review thing, I've just written down something here that I've been learning over the last few months. But apparently we make 95% of our, I mean, statistics are made up, aren't they? But this is from a reputable source, I believe.
And they're always rounded up to a 5 or a 0.
But I don't know whether this is true or not, but I can see that it would be. We make 95% of our decisions throughout every day subconsciously. So that means we're just kind of just, you know, you get up, you go to work, you do this, you do that, you react to things all day, and then the odd few things you make a conscious decision. So if you can change your subconscious and bring that 95% to be like those guys who just turned up yesterday morning for a session because that's what they do on a Monday morning, and all of that, when they wouldn't have considered exercise before, maybe. So that's why I like that hot and cold review thing, because you look at your decision when you're emotional.
In the emotions,
yeah, and then you look at your decision when you're in a better, you'd say a more focused state, and you can immediately compare the two. And if they're totally different, you're like, right, I need to sort that out. And that's what I love, is the comparison of it, because you can tell people only make decisions when you're being logical. Never make decisions when you're being, and that's like, you know, it's impossible, isn't it? You don't know when you are and when you're not. So I love that process, because you get that instant comparison to be able to say, and anyone who looks at that and goes, no, I'm happy, I'm more happy making decisions when I'm emotional, is, you know, is going to be beyond help, aren't they? But
and there's a top tip for everyone listening, is on all modern phones now. I'm saying there's probably a phone that goes, it's not on mine, Mark, but all the ones I know is there's a free app already built into the phones, which is just voice recorder. And if it's not on your phone, you can easily get it. So all you do is, once you've had a conversation, and I recommend anyone does it if there's a bit of a conflict conversation, or it's gone exceptionally well, but the conflict ones, basically, as soon as you're walking away, you just voice record, and you can save them in libraries, and you just press record, and you just reflect, okay, how was my state? How was my decision making? How was my execution? And decision making is often, was I listening, or was I waiting for my time to talk? You know, did I really seek for understanding? Was I open to a different idea, or was I really fixed? But you just, less a minute. And then all you do is, when you're calmed down, you listen back to it. And then listening back to it, when you're always a little bit wise, you go, actually, I didn't really listen, or I'd already gone into there not liking a mad bias or whatever it was. Now, here's the important factor. We need to close the loop. So this is where growth happens. So if you're now recognizing you are unacceptable, and you've got to be open when you're listening back, once you're in a calm place, you've got to go back and finish the loop. So that is going back to that person, and you measure it so you're in a good state, and just say, look, just going to have a catch up with you. I just reflected on that conversation, and I could have done better there. You know, I didn't really listen, you know, and really express in that way, but I'm going to do better again. So it may be can we just tighten up, and could you explain to me that again so I can now better understand? Or it may be you didn't actually agree anything, so can we agree? But just doing that loop, closing a loop, using that as a process is very, very powerful. And also what it does, it lets the other person know, oh my God, that person came to me and said actually they were wrong, and how can we be better next time? They're starting with self. It's not I apologize, but it's, hey, no, I'm reviewing on me, because this is about me becoming better. And actually, I wasn't good enough there, and I'm going to work to be better next time, with no buts. So you're not addressing them, you're addressing you itself. And reflection must always start with self, not with others. It's always self. State first, and then your decisions, your choices, never about someone else first. And that's a big transition for coaches, managers, and parents as well, when there is a bit of conflict, because often their thought is with others. I didn't like how they. And the important thing is we start at self. And that's where the change that we can control can empower others.
That's brilliant. Now, number one, I'm going to try to remember what I was going to say after this, but even if you haven't got the app, there's one of these and one of these, right? That's a pen and that's a notebook.
Peter, let me add that, Peter. The reason why I don't like that, and I know you primed it so I could say the reason I don't like that,
obviously,
is it doesn't have your voice. And what your voice gives you is the tonality. It gives you the hearing of your frustration. And that's where you can really get the texture. That's why coaches that do it around the world with me, they're not allowed to type it. They can type the cold review, but the hot review, it's either a facey video, which not many like doing, or it's the voice, because the voice is giving me the reality of how frustrated you were, how angry.
But this is
can't use emojis then.
But this is the thing as well, it gets it out of your head though, doesn't it? Because otherwise you're going to have that if you're having the conversation in your head, you convince yourself you're right, don't you? Most of the time, because you're going to believe yourself. Whereas if you do that and then just leave it like you say, and then you look back on it when you're less emotional, it's like you look at it, you act objectively, don't you, I suppose?
And often when you write and type art review, you're already filtering it, because you're starting to think what you should write. The voice is just letting it out.
I mean, the reason why I said that was because I do journaling every morning. And what I do at the minute, it's just like a dictate thing, and I just sit there and think, what am I thinking this morning? What's my state? How do I feel? And I'll just most of the time I'll sit there and I'll go, nothing. There's nothing there, and then all of a sudden I'll start like talking in my head, and then I'm like, I've got like I've just bang. The writing's dreadful, because it's just literally a dump. But then that sets me up for the rest of the day to go ahead and go, right, that's the state I'm in. This is why. This is how it's made me feel. And it makes me feel better. It's amazing. Rather than just second guessing yourself all day long, you're like, right, I've got that all out of my head now. Because as soon as you wake up in the morning, you're ready. You're ready for the whole world to come at you, aren't you?
Because by doing that in that situation, you're putting yourself present. You're placing the intent on the reflection, because you're not allowing yourself to be anywhere else. Yeah,
it's brilliant. I love it. I get lots of Facebook posts out of it as well.
I was just going to ask, Mark, you're on your social media, you've got, and I know you kind of mentioned it when we went right back to near the start, when you spoke about your, I suppose, like an epiphany when you were doing your training in the military and stuff. Your philosophy, you're saying that performance is a behavior, not an outcome. That's obviously something that's sort of front and center and important to you and your philosophy. Can you just kind of explain, I suppose, kind of what you mean by that, and on the whole, sort of how you apply that philosophy?
Yes, so it underpins my whole belief in everything I work with, everything I do, is there's the outcome is, there's too many variables in an outcome. It's the outcome is what you can't control. It's the most unstable element because of the variables. But actually what you can control and what can influence is your behavior, because in anything we do, everything, the choices we make and how we execute them starts with our behavior in thought and then in action. Now, so long as we have, and we could take any situation, whether it's a parenting, a kid learning in school, a young kid in sport, in business, it doesn't matter. What we're saying is, look, so long as your behaviors are aligned to your goal, i.e. the thoughts you make and the choices and your commitment to them and that execution, so long as you're getting the right technical and tactical expertise around you and you continue to doing that, you will maximize your performance based on your genetic potential. Now, if you're doing that, the results you get will be the results you get. So what you're doing now is you're starting from the source of where you can control and the influencers to the best outcomes you can get. But what you're not starting is measuring anything by outcome. It's everything before, the facilitators to potential. And if we can spend and dissect what are the ones we're in charge of, what are the things that can impact our success, and we put texture on them, that's where we're going to get all the success from. Not just success in performance, but in wellness as well. And too often what people do is they focus on the outcome, or the outcome is a status of how good we are as a person or how great we are as a team. Great example is if we look at football now, Manchester City. Now, however great or poor the coaching is, Manchester City is one of the wealthiest clubs in the world. And you could argue, I'm not saying this is the fact, but you could argue they are the best at scouting and buying the best players. Now, they'll win championships because they have the best players. Now, if you put that same coaching team in a lower level Premiership team, that team, the chances are they would not be top of the league. Why? Because actually all you can do is get the best out of the people around you. And if their competency levels and capabilities are lower, that's all you'll get. The problem is in the world today is we're so focused on that's the best coach or that's the best manager because look at their profits and margins or outcomes. But there's too many facilitators, there's too many variables that could be a marker of success measure. So that's why for me, performance is always where everything's going to come from. And that's why that quote really resonates in everything I do.
Right, James, that was a great question because this happens every podcast, by the way, is at the end, somebody like the guests or you today, it just comes out with like something to frame it perfectly to end, to put a perfect place to say, right, we can stop there. That was just great. And it's you know, what you just said there is basically it can be applied to anybody. So like, you know, it doesn't matter. You're talking about the best coaches and having the best team and all that. It doesn't matter because like, you know, like teachers and parents and stuff like that. If you make a difference on your kids or one child in school or whatever, your class in school, you're making a difference in the wider world, aren't you? So I love that. That's brilliant. Yeah, I think we should wrap up there. So Mark, if people want to find you, well, you're everywhere, aren't you? Put it this way, I've been on your website and I don't think you'll find it surprising that I haven't looked through everything on there because there's quite a lot. I've watched a few videos and stuff and it's really interesting because obviously, you know, you're in many different worlds, but like you're kind of teaching the same sort of stuff in those worlds. So it's great. So yeah, where do people find you if you want them to?
It's PDS Coach, so Papa Delta Sierra Coach. That's pretty much me everywhere. The website's there, Twitter, Insta. Although I still can't get a head around Insta, but I am on there. Most of my stuff's through Twitter. And obviously my website's got all the services, but it's got free resources. And obviously that online members area now, which is over 78 hours of resources now for anyone to help upskill them in this area. So yeah, just the PDS Coach is where you'll find me. Can I finish with a question for all of you? I like throwing it back at you. From this chat.
Hang on, it's our podcast. No, you can't.
No, yeah. I'm a guest. Is from this conversation, what's been your biggest takeaway for each of you?
Mine, I think, I was aware of this and I tried to do it, but it's how to do it with other people who say they can't. Because obviously in the coaching world and that you learn, like, you know, you start to take a step back to move forwards, but not so far back that you're just doing nothing, you know, and you can be all relaxed and all that sort of stuff, but stepping back and doing the right things, more of the right things at the time, whatever's right at the time, because that changes as well, doesn't it, to get you going forwards. But how it is possible to do that within businesses and within your own personal life and stuff like that, no matter how chaotic it is to be able to get that sort of level of calmness, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that's needed right now, because this is one of the reasons I've been looking into this, and I was like, your stuff really resonated with me and all that. One of the reasons for that is because I see it a lot with my clients who never used to be like that as well, and are starting to get a bit more like that at the moment because there's a lot of uncertainty around a lot of things at the minute. which we don't really go into on this podcast because it's heated. But there is, and it's getting reflected in society, I think. So the fact that if people listen to this and they know it's possible, I think that's great.
Yeah, I think for me it was the stuff around state really was a big. It's stuff I've kind of been working on, but it's really highlighted. And I think the way you explained it, and the way that your state will cloud your judgment and change your actions was really important. And also, I've been having some conversations lately around not focusing purely on the outcome, and actually focusing on your actions and the processes and the habits and the daily routines and rituals that you put in place. And if you take care of all of that, then good things are going to happen down the line, but don't worry too much about the outcome. So that was really good. And then also just personally on a kind of leadership, kind of managing staff kind of level for me, that the whole thing around building trust in capability, and that kind of when you treat someone a certain way, then I can't remember you said it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You kind of tend to mollycoddle them because you don't think they're capable, and then they just kind of roll into that role, and you kind of just frustrate yourself more. Yes, there was loads there. It was a really, really fascinating conversation, and it's given me lots to think about. But no, it was fantastic. So thank you.
I think for me, it's about highlighting the people's ability to make a decision. I think the more I think about it, the more I think fitness and just, running businesses, being a parent, whatever, it's about being able to practice making decisions, not being too attached sometimes to making a bad decision, being able to reflect on that decision making, and then going back and making another decision. And the more you make decisions, I mean, when I think about some of the most high performing individuals in the world, the fact that they have to make decisions, whether it's in sport, whether it's someone like Elon Musk or someone who's making decisions that affect, stock markets and political decisions, it's being able to be faced with scenarios, being able to make a decision, trust that decision, live with the decision, and then go back and evaluate it and then keep making decisions. I think the more I think about it, the more I have to turn my business into a kind of decision-making entity, in a sense that when someone works with us, yes, they're going to be strength training, they're going to be learning to eat well, they're going to, get in the right mindset. But it's about what are the decisions, what is the practice they have to make in order to make those things happen? Because otherwise they just the more you think about it, the more you can get these things for free. You can get a meal plan for free. I mean, why work with me? It's not telling people not to work with me, but why? Why? I mean, why? I mean, I had the guy sat down and said, well, why would I work with you? And it's like, that's a good question, especially when you've got a membership at Pure Gym and you're enjoying going to the classes. Why work with me? It's got to be that coaching to people to make decisions. And then the final thought is, what I hope is if I'm recording what I'm doing and I'm doing those voice memos, I hope they're nothing like my diary when I was 16, because I did find that recently and I was a bit of a dick, and I can see why I didn't have a game for
Can I just add a rule onto the decision making picked up? The rule we always say is that commit without fear. Once you've backed yourself, just go for it. But if you haven't committed, you haven't earned the right to review, because the conclusion is you haven't committed. Next time, just commit. And it stops the micro-analyzing, overthinking. Like, you didn't commit. That's your answer. Stop there. Commit. Keep it simple.
There you go. Bosh. There's the end. I love that though, Mark. Thank you for asking that question, by the way, because we usually do a little review at the end anyway.
Oh,
but
good.
that is great. So we usually do that, but obviously you doing what you do, you're like, right, what is the feedback? Because that's what you're after, right? That's like, it's the loop, like you said. So that is brilliant. So thanks for that. And thanks for coming on. This has been really interesting. I've really enjoyed it.
It's a pleasure. I mean, it's all these sort of interactions are, if you can cause a positive ripple for your listeners that may never have met me and go, I can take one thing and I'm better because of it, then it's a win for me. So I'm more than happy. So thanks for inviting me on.
That's what I love it when people say that as well. Because it'll be more than one person. There'll be a fair few ripples come out of this, I think. I mean, there's 3 here, so we're sorted. We haven't even put it out yet. But that's great. So yes, thanks for listening again. Episode 111, Health Authority Podcast. Again, you can find us on Facebook. You can join the group. You can leave us a review wherever you're listening, if you're allowed to leave a review. If not, just share it with one of your friends, especially episodes like this, which I think everybody can help every individual It, like Mark's just said, if you get one, I mean, we've said so much in this episode. If you get one part of it which resonates with you and you take action on that, things will start to change. And then that creates another ripple effect of decisions throughout your life. So again, Mark, thank you. It's been lovely to meet you as well. So thank you for that. James, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Paul, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We appreciate you all. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.